He told me, "I'd never do that to you." And I almost believed him, until I opened his laptop and saw the draft message he never meant for me to find. Before we dive in, if you love full Reddit-style relationship stories with betrayal, receipts, and that slow burn justice at the end, do me a quick favor. Hit like, subscribe to channel, and drop a comment telling me what you would have done. We're pushing for our first 100 subscribers, and every like and sub helps YouTube actually test these videos. Alright, here's what happened. I'm 32F, my husband Evan is 34M, we've been together 7 years, married for 4. If you looked at our life from the outside, it was the kind of normal that people envy. Small house, 1 dog, decent jobs, and a routine that felt safe. Not exciting, not messy, not the kind of couple that gives your friends entertainment at brunch. I used to think that was a win. Evan worked in operations for a mid-sized company. I work in healthcare administration, mostly desk work, scheduling, budgets, and a lot of problem solving. We weren't rich, but we were stable. We paid our bills, we weren't drowning, and we had plans. That's important because what happened later didn't start as some obvious cheating scandal. It started like a slow weather change. Tiny shifts that were easy to explain away if you wanted to keep believing everything was fine. The first shift came right after Evan got promoted. He'd been chasing that position for a while, long hours, extra projects, trying to impress the right people. When he finally got it, I was proud of him. We celebrated, I posted a photo of us at dinner, and he looked genuinely happy. The first couple of weeks after the promotion, he had that adrenaline glow. He was talking fast, making plans, saying things like, "This is going to be a new chapter for us." Then he started guarding his phone like it contained state secrets. Evan used to be normal with his phone. He'd leave it on the counter while cooking. He'd toss it on the couch and forget it existed. He'd hand it to me if I asked him to pull up a picture or check a message while he was driving. Not because we checked each other's phones, but because there was nothing to hide. After the promotion, the phone never left his body. If it buzzed, his hand moved automatically. If I walked into a room, he'd tilt the screen away. If I sat next to him, he'd angle his shoulder like a shield. Small things, but your gut notices patterns before your brain catches up. The second shift was his language. He started saying things in this careful, concerned tone that sounded sweet if you didn't pay attention. The kind of comments that look supportive on paper but feel weird when you're the one living them. "You've been really stressed lately. You're kind of sensitive these days. Are you okay? You seem anxious. Maybe you should talk to someone." At first I thought he was noticing I was tired, because I was tired. I was doing a lot of the house stuff, a lot of the planning, a lot of the emotional labor. Evan has always been the kind of guy who says, "Just tell me what you need me to do," which sounds helpful until you realize that telling him what to do is also labor. So yes, I was tired, but his concern didn't feel like care. It felt recorded, like he wanted me to agree with him, like he was collecting sound bites. Around that time, a new name started appearing in our life, Kira. At first it was casual. "Kira's really good at what she does. Kira helped me restructure the schedule. Kira thinks I handled that meeting well." I didn't care that he had a coworker. I'm not the spouse who freaks out over every name, but the frequency and the way he said it started to bother me. He'd say her name with this lightness I hadn't heard from him in a while, like he was more animated talking about her than he was talking about us. One night we were on the couch half watching a show and his phone buzzed. He smiled at the screen, then quickly wiped the expression off his face like he'd been caught. I said, "Who was that?" He answered too fast, "Work." I nodded, but my gut did that little drop. When people answer too fast, it's usually because they're not answering you. They're answering the thing they think you're about to ask. The first time I saw the word wifey, it hit me like a slap. It wasn't even intentional. Evan had left his phone on the table while he went to grab something from the kitchen. The notification preview popped up. I wasn't snooping. I was literally staring at the TV and the phone lit up in my peripheral vision. Kira, good night, wifey ring. I stared for a second, waiting for my brain to correct it. Maybe it said something else. Maybe I misread it, but it was right there, bright and clear. When Evan came back, I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just asked calmly, "Why is Kira calling you wifey?" He didn't even flinch. He sighed like I asked him to explain gravity. "Oh my God, it's a joke." "A joke." "Work joke," he said. "Like work spouse. It's not romantic, it's office humor." I said, "It doesn't feel like office humor." He rolled his eyes. "Please don't do this." That tone, that "you're being ridiculous" tone. It was the first time I felt that cold little needle of doubt. Am I reacting normally, or am I becoming the crazy wife in his head? I dropped it, not because I believed him, but because I didn't want to fight. I told myself, okay, maybe it's dumb workplace language. People do weird things. Maybe I'm overthinking it. But it didn't stop. It escalated. He'd laugh at his phone and then hide the screen. He started taking calls outside. He started staying late at work but calling it catching up. If I asked when he'd be home, he'd say, "I don't know, depends," in that irritated tone, like my question was an inconvenience. One Saturday morning, I asked him to walk the dog with me. Just a simple thing, 10 minutes, fresh air. He didn't look up from his laptop. "I can't." "Because of emails?" I asked. He sighed and leaned back. "Because my job matters, babe." He started saying babe, in that fake soft voice that people use when they want to sound kind while shutting you down. I walked the dog alone, and I remember standing under a streetlight thinking, if this is what the promotion did to him, we're in trouble. Then the jokes became public. Evan started bringing Kira up at dinners with friends, like casual little mentions. Our friends would laugh like, "Oh wow, Evan has a work wife now." And Evan would smile like it was harmless. He never corrected them. He never said, "No, that's disrespectful." He just let it hang there like he enjoyed the implication. And every time I looked uncomfortable, he'd squeeze my knee under the table or touch my shoulder, like a performance of reassurance. At home, when I finally said, "This is bothering me," he did the thing people do when they want to avoid responsibility. He turned it into a flaw in me. "You're being insecure." I said, "I'm asking for basic respect." He shook his head. "You're reading into everything, she's just a coworker." I asked him, "Then why does she call you wifey?" He gave me that slow, patronizing smile. "Because it's funny." I didn't feel funny. I felt humiliated. And then the language changed again. The concerned comments got sharper. "You're on edge a lot. You always assume the worst. You've been kind of paranoid." The more I pushed back, the more he framed me as unstable. And that's when the third shift appeared. Evan started telling other people his version of me. I noticed it first with his mom. His mom has always been polite but a little distant with me. Not mean, just always on Evan's side by default. One Sunday we went over there for lunch and she kept asking me if I was doing okay in this overly gentle tone, like I might cry if she said the wrong thing. I said, "I'm fine." She patted my hand. "Evan said you've been overwhelmed." I turned to Evan. "Did you tell your mom I'm overwhelmed?" He shrugged like it was normal. "I was worried about you." I looked at him and realized something. He didn't look worried. He looked satisfied, like he'd planted something and it was starting to grow. That night I asked him directly, "What are you telling people about me?" He laughed like I was ridiculous. "Nothing." I said, "Your mom thinks I'm on the verge of a breakdown." He sighed, "You're making it worse by obsessing." Obsessing, another label. I started feeling like I was walking on eggshells inside my own marriage. If I reacted emotionally, it would prove his point. If I stayed calm, it would look like I was suppressing something. If I asked questions, I was paranoid. If I stopped asking, I was distant. It was a trap. And the thing that scares me looking back is how close it came to working. There were nights I lay awake thinking, maybe I am overreacting. Maybe I'm becoming one of those jealous spouses. Maybe my stress is making me interpret everything wrong. That's what gaslighting does. It doesn't make you believe a lie immediately. It makes you doubt your ability to know what's real. Then my laptop died. It was a random Tuesday night. I had work to submit, my laptop wouldn't turn on, and my charger was dead too. Evan was at the kitchen table with his laptop open, earbuds in, typing. I said, "Hey, can I use your laptop for 5 minutes? I just need to email a file." He hesitated, a fraction too long. Then he said, Sure, just don't close anything." That was weird, but I needed to submit my work, so I sat down and opened a browser. And his email was already open. I didn't intend to look, I swear. But the screen was right there, and the draft folder was visible, and a subject line practically screamed at me. It said, RE, strategy/documentation. My stomach dropped. I clicked it before I could talk myself out of it, because my brain was already screaming. Why would your husband be drafting something called documentation about strategy? And there it was. A long email draft written like a plan, not romantic, not flirty, not even emotional. A plan. He had typed, "Need to keep this clean. No yelling, no threats, just notes. If she spirals, I'll have timestamps. If she starts acting unstable again, I can push for a wellness eval. Also, keep communication in writing. Use phrases like 'I'm concerned and I want you to get help.' It makes me look reasonable." I felt ice crawl up my spine. I kept reading. My hands were shaking so badly I had to hold the trackpad steady. He wrote, "She's been accusing me about Kira. It's irrational. I can frame it as paranoia. If she explodes, I'll record it. If she calms down, I'll still mention it later to family so there's a pattern. Then goal, exit clean, keep house. If she leaves, great. If not, push her out by making her look unstable." My mouth went dry. My heart was pounding like I'd run upstairs. This wasn't a man having an affair. This was a man trying to rewrite reality in a way that would hurt me long term. This was him setting me up. And then I saw the line that made me physically nauseous. He wrote, "I need her to be the one who breaks, so it's not my fault." I sat there frozen. The room felt unreal, like I was watching my life from outside my body. The draft was addressed to someone but not sent. The to field was blank, but at the bottom of the draft he had pasted a name and contact info. A lawyer. Not our lawyer, not a joint contact. A divorce attorney. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. Then I did the first smart thing I'd done in weeks. I took a photo of it with my phone. Then another. And another. I photographed the entire draft, every paragraph, every line, so I couldn't be told later it didn't exist. Then I emailed those photos to myself in a new email thread with a subject like receipts, so I could find it fast. I sat back in the chair and stared at the ceiling like I was trying to keep myself from throwing up. And in that moment, I realized the most terrifying part. Evan wasn't just lying to me. He was preparing to destroy me with a story that sounded believable to everyone else. Concerned husband, unstable wife, promotion stress. Wife gets paranoid. Husband tries to help. Wife spirals. Husband has no choice. People love that narrative. And he was building it brick by brick. I heard Evan's chair scrape behind me. He stood up, walked over, and saw me sitting there too still. "What are you doing?" he asked. I turned slowly and forced my face into neutral. That's the thing about survival mode. You become an actor. I said, "Just sending my file." He glanced at the screen. His eyes flicked to the draft folder. I saw the microsecond of panic. "Did you open my email?" he asked, voice too casual. I met his gaze and kept my voice normal. It was already open. He laughed, but it sounded strained. "You always do this. You're always looking for something." I said quietly, "I'm not looking for anything. I needed to send a file." He stared at me like he was trying to decide if I knew. Then he smiled, and I will never forget this smile because it was not his normal smile. It was a smile that said, "I need to regain control." "Okay," he said softly, "just don't stress yourself out." There it was again, stress, concern, planting the narrative. I nodded, handed the laptop back, and went to the bathroom. I locked the door and sat on the edge of the tub, shaking. I didn't cry, not yet. My brain was too busy. Because the truth was clear now. I wasn't just dealing with a cheating husband. I was dealing with a husband who was trying to make me look mentally unstable so he could win a divorce before it even started. So I did the second smart thing. I stopped reacting. For the next week I played calm. I smiled. I said, "Ma'am." I didn't mention Kira. I didn't mention the draft. I didn't confront him. I watched him like a documentary. And once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Every time he spoke to me, he was careful. If I asked a normal question like, "What time will you be home?" he'd answer, then add, "I'm just worried you're spiraling again." Again, always again. Like it had happened before, even if it hadn't. He started texting me things that looked supportive, but were obviously meant to be screenshots. "Hey babe, please take a breath. I love you. I don't want you to get worked up. I think you should talk to someone." At first glance, those messages make him look like a saint. If you read them as part of a pattern, they're a trap. He wanted written proof that he was concerned. So I started creating my own proof. I bought a small voice recorder, the kind people use for lectures. I kept it in my purse. I didn't record constantly. I recorded moments when he started baiting me, when he'd say something designed to make me snap, and then he'd sit back like he was waiting for the explosion. I also checked our finances. Quietly. I pulled my credit report. I opened a separate bank account in my name only and transferred a small amount of money each week so it wouldn't be obvious. Not enough to trigger a fight, just enough that if he tried to lock me out financially, I could survive. I changed passwords on my personal accounts. Email, banking, health portal, everything. I added two-factor authentication. I made sure my phone had a lock screen. And I told one person, just one, my older cousin Jenna, who is basically my emergency contact for life. I texted her, "Something is really wrong. If I call you and say I need the blue folder, you come to my house immediately." She replied instantly, "Are you safe?" I said, "Not in danger right now, but I think he's setting me up." I didn't want to sound dramatic, but I also didn't want to be alone if things escalated. Because here's what I knew. Evan had a plan, and plans don't stay in draft folders forever. They move. And sure enough, 2 weeks later, he tried the next step. It was a Thursday night. He came home later than usual and he was too calm, like he'd rehearsed the evening. He sat across from me at the kitchen table and said, "I've been thinking." I kept my face neutral. "About what?" He sighed, "About you." I waited. He said, "I think you need help." There it was, the script. I asked calmly, "What makes you say that?" He leaned forward. "The paranoia, the suspicion, the mood swings, you're not yourself." I forced myself not to flinch. I said, "I'm tired, that's not the same thing." He tilted his head sympathetically. "See, you get defensive, that's what I mean." He wanted me defensive. He wanted me emotional. He wanted me to raise my voice so he could label it a meltdown. So I stayed calm and said, "If you truly think I need help, we can discuss a therapist, but you don't get to diagnose me at the kitchen table." He blinked, like I'd broken the flow of his story. Then he did something that confirmed everything. He said, "I talked to someone." My stomach tightened. "Who?" "A professional," he said quickly. "Someone who knows how these things go." I looked at him. "You talked to a therapist about me without me." He shrugged. "I'm worried I had to." I said quietly, "Evan, if you're worried, you talk to me, not about me." He leaned back and crossed his arms, and his voice got colder. "I'm trying to protect us, but you're making it hard." That moment, I realized he was frustrated because I wasn't giving him the breakdown he wanted. So he escalated again. 2 days later, on Saturday morning, there was a knock on our door. I opened it and saw two people, a woman and a man, both wearing badges. My brain went blank for half a second, and then the woman said, "Hi, we're here for a wellness check. We received a call that you might be a danger to yourself." My stomach dropped through the floor. I turned slowly and looked back into the house. Evan was standing in the hallway with his phone in his hand, pretending to look concerned. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. I wanted to drag him outside and expose him to the neighbors. Instead, I did the hardest thing. I smiled politely and said, "I'm okay. I'm not a danger to myself. Who called you?" The woman hesitated. "We can't disclose that." I nodded and said, "You're welcome to come in, but I'm also going to record this interaction for my safety." Evan's face tightened. The officer, because the man was an officer, looked at Evan and asked, "Sir, are you her husband?" Evan stepped forward. "Yes, I'm just worried she's been not herself, she's been unstable." He said it so smoothly, like he'd practiced, like he'd been waiting for this scene. I looked at the officer and said calmly, "I'm safe. I'm employed. I haven't threatened myself. I haven't threatened anyone. My husband has been telling people I'm unstable for weeks. I believe he is trying to create a paper trail." The woman's eyes changed slightly, like she was actually listening now. Evan jumped in. "See, she's paranoid. She thinks I'm out to get her." I turned to Evan and said, very calmly, "Stop." And he flinched just a tiny bit, because he wasn't expecting that tone from me. He expected tears or yelling, not calm authority. The wellness check ended without incident. The woman asked if I had anyone I could call to be with me. I said yes. I called Jenna. I said the code phrase. She arrived within 20 minutes. Evan looked annoyed that I wasn't isolated. After they left, he tried to act like he'd done something noble. "I did that because I love you," he said softly. Jenna was sitting at our table now, staring at him like she wanted to set him on fire with her eyes. I said, "You did that because you want me to look unstable." He widened his eyes like a wounded hero. "Oh my God, this is what I mean." Jenna said, "Evan, I'm going to be very clear. If you make another call like that without cause, I will personally help her file a report." Evan's face hardened. He didn't like witnesses. He didn't like pushback. He didn't like the narrative changing. That night when he thought I was asleep, he went to the office and started typing on his laptop. I heard the clicking. I heard the chair shift. So I recorded. And the next morning when he left for work, I did the third smart thing. I met with a lawyer. Not his lawyer, mine. I walked into a small office, sat across from a woman with kind eyes and sharp posture, and I said, "I think my husband is trying to set me up to look mentally unstable." And then I handed her my phone with photos of the draft email. Her expression changed as she read it. She didn't look shocked like a friend would. She looked focused, like a professional seeing a pattern. She said, "Do you have children?" I said no. She nodded slowly. "That makes this simpler, but it's still serious. Do not confront him, do not announce you know. Document everything, keep yourself safe, and we're going to create our own paper trail." She helped me create a plan, not revenge, protection. We drafted a formal letter. We gathered evidence. We prepared to file if needed. She told me to keep copies of everything in multiple locations. And then she said one line that stuck with me. "People who try to build a case like this usually panic when the other person stops playing their role." That was Evan's problem. I stopped playing my role. Over the next week, he pushed harder. He started baiting me more directly. He'd say things like, "Did you take your meds?" when I don't take meds. He'd say it casually like a joke, but if I reacted, he'd say, "See, you're unstable." If I didn't react, he'd tell someone later I was numb. He also started pushing a new narrative with our friends. Suddenly people were checking on me. "Hey, are you okay? Evan said you've been having a tough time. Do you need anything?" At first it was humiliating, then it was confirming. And then I got the real reason. Because one evening, Evan left his laptop open again. This time, it wasn't his email. It was a messaging app, and a chat window was up with Kira. I wasn't looking for it. I walked into the room to grab Milo's toy, and there it was on the screen like a neon sign. Kira had written, "So when are you actually leaving her?" Evan had typed and not sent. "Soon. I'm building the paper trail. She's unstable. It'll be clean." I felt my vision narrow. My hands went cold. My mouth went dry. This wasn't just about him keeping the house. This was about him painting me as unstable so he could leave me without consequences, without guilt, without people questioning him. He wanted to be the hero even while betraying me. I took photos again, every line. Then I did something I didn't think I was capable of. I stayed calm. I didn't storm in and scream. I didn't throw the laptop. I didn't call Kira. I didn't call Evan. I walked out of the room, sat on the couch and waited. When Evan came home later that night, he sat beside me and did his usual performance. "Hey babe, how was your day? You seem quiet." I looked at him and said calmly, "Evan, I want you to tell me the truth." His eyes flicked away. "About what?" "About everything I wanted to say. About the last 6 months. About the script. About Kira. About the wellness check. About the draft emails and the lawyer and the trap." Instead I said, "About Kira." He smiled like he'd been waiting. "Here we go." I didn't raise my voice. I said, "Are you having an affair?" He laughed a sharp laugh. "No." I said, "So she doesn't call you wifey. You don't call her your work wife. You haven't been texting her at night. You haven't been telling people I'm unstable." His jaw tightened. "You're spiraling again." I nodded slowly like I understood. "Okay." He blinked. "Okay." I stood up and said, "I'm going to bed." That confused him. He wanted a fight. He wanted the breakdown. He wanted me to throw accusations so he could capture them. I didn't give it to him. The next morning, I followed my lawyer's plan. I moved quietly. I packed a bag with essentials. I took my important documents. I moved sentimental items that could accidentally disappear. I took photos of the condition of the house. I made sure Milo's records were with me. I left the house and went to Jenna's place for the day. Not because I was running, but because I wanted safety and witnesses. That afternoon, my lawyer filed. Evan got served at work. And according to one of his coworkers, who later reached out to me quietly, he absolutely lost his mind. Not because he was heartbroken, not because he was guilty, because he lost control of the story. He called me that night from a blocked number, because I'd already blocked his. I didn't pick up. He left a voicemail. His voice was different now. Sharp, angry, no babe. No, I'm concerned. What the hell did you do? Are you trying to ruin my life? You're making yourself look insane. I almost laughed. He still wanted the insane wife label, even as his own voice cracked with rage. Then he texted from another number. You're making a huge mistake. Let's talk like adults. You're going to regret this. Adults like adults. The man who tried to have me wellness checked was asking for adult conversation now. Over the next 48 hours, the mask came off fully. He started sending messages that sounded threatening, then deleting them, then sending softer messages that sounded reasonable. He was trying to create a new paper trail that painted him as calm and me as cruel. Except this time, I had everything. I had the draft documentation email. I had the chat with Kira. I had the wellness check incident. I had recordings of him baiting me. I had screenshots of his concerned texts that were clearly performative when paired with the context. And here's the part he didn't expect. Kira panicked. Because when Evan got served, she realized this wasn't some romantic fantasy where he leaves his crazy wife and rides into the sunset with her. This was a legal situation, a workplace situation, a reputational situation. Kira messaged him, "Why are you saying I'm involved? Why would you write that about her? This is too much." Evan tried to calm her down. "It's fine, it's strategy." Strategy, like I was an opponent, not his wife. Then Kira did the one thing that made everything collapse. She went to HR. Not because she suddenly cared about me, because she cared about herself. HR got involved because Evan used company systems for personal messages, and because he was apparently dragging a coworker into a messy situation that could become a liability. Within a week, Evan was on leave pending investigation. He called me from another number again. This time he sounded desperate. "Please," he said, "you don't understand what you're doing." I listened calmly, then said, "I understand perfectly. I found the draft, Evan." Silence. Real silence. Not the performative silence. The kind of silence where someone realizes the game is over. Then his voice went small. "You went through my laptop." I almost laughed again. That was his defense, after everything. I said, "I saw what you wrote. If she spirals, I'll have timestamps. Wellness eval. Make her look unstable. You tried to set me up." He tried to flip it instantly. "I was just venting. That wasn't a plan." I said, "You called a wellness check." He paused. Then he said, "I was worried." I said, "You weren't worried. You were building a story." He started crying. Actual crying. And it might have worked on me months ago. But after you see the machinery behind someone's behavior, the emotion stops being convincing. He said, "You're going to ruin me." I said, "You did that yourself." Then I hung up. The divorce process wasn't instant. It never is. But once the narrative collapsed, Evan couldn't rebuild it. Because his entire plan depended on me reacting in a way that made him look justified. And I didn't. In mediation, he tried to act calm and concerned. My lawyer slid the printed draft email across the table. His lawyer's face changed immediately. Like, "Oh, this isn't a misunderstanding. This is calculated." Evan tried to claim it was taken out of context. But there's no context where push her out by making her look unstable is normal. He tried to claim I was paranoid. But then my lawyer played a short clip, just enough of him baiting me and then calling me unstable for responding normally. It was ugly, not dramatic like TV, but ugly in a quiet, real way. The final outcome was simple. I got my portion of assets, I got Milo, and Evan got the consequences of trying to play chess with someone's sanity. He didn't get to be the hero. He didn't get the clean exit story. He didn't get to say, "My wife became unstable and I had no choice." Because the receipts showed the truth. He wanted to leave, he wanted to cheat, and he wanted to make me the villain so he could feel innocent. The last time I saw him in person was when we did the final pickup. He stood in the doorway of the house, looking smaller, older, exhausted. He said quietly, "I didn't mean for it to go this far." And I looked at him and realized the saddest thing. He probably believed that. He didn't mean for consequences to reach him. He meant for them to reach me. I said, "You meant for it to go far for me. You just didn't think I'd find out." He opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, then closed it, because there was nothing left to say. I left, drove to my new apartment, let Milo run around like he owned the place, and sat on the floor in silence. Not devastated silence. Relieved silence. Because when you spend months being told you're too sensitive, too paranoid, too unstable, and then you finally see proof that you were right all along, the relief is almost painful. So yeah, when he told me, "I'd never do that to you," I almost believed him. But the draft message told the truth. And if you're listening to this and you're living with someone who constantly calls you insecure, unstable, crazy, dramatic, especially when you're reacting to disrespect, please hear me. A healthy partner doesn't need you to doubt your reality to stay in control. Sometimes the biggest revenge isn't yelling. It's staying calm, collecting receipts, and refusing to play the role they wrote for you.